What's up, beautiful people? It's me, Sebastian. Welcome back to another wonderful episode of Conspiracy Chatter, brought to you by my SoundCloud account. Once again, I'm Sebastian Labor. This is Conspiracy Chatter. I'm here with AIDS expert Steven Liakakos. Steven, say hi to the viewers.
Hey everybody, I know my stuff on this subject, so you better listen to me because it's about to get real crazy.
Last week we had Mateo in, and we had an interesting talk about Bigfoot and all his expertise, knowledge, and his existence.
But what he said is not going to blow your mind like what I'm about to say to you. So get ready. Just fasten your seatbelt, get popcorn, do whatever. Shower, you're going to sweat, so get ready.
We got a heavy hitter here today, talking about the CIA and their involvements with the big AIDS epidemic. See, that's why you're the expert, not me.
I'm smart.
So, just a little bit about the conspiracy here. So, since the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention first reported the HIV-AIDS epidemic in 1981, shout out to all of those born in 1981, rumors have been carried out that the deadly virus was created by the CIA to wipe out homosexuals and African Americans. I repeat, homosexuals and African Americans. Even today, the conspiracy theory has a number of high-profile believers. South African President Thabo Mbeki once touted that the theory, disputing scientific claims that the virus originated in Africa and accusing the U.S. government of manufacturing the disease in military labs. We talked about Area 51 in a military lab hiding aliens. Now we're talking about American labs creating AIDS. I think we're onto a trend here.
It makes you really question, what is the government up to? And I'll be talking about that. It's going to knock your socks off.
When Thabo Mbeki won a Nobel Peace Prize, Kenya ecologist Wangari Maathai once used in an international spotlight to support the theory as well. Others insist that the government deliberately injected gay men with the virus during 1978 hepatitis B experiments in New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. We'll talk about those key dates and places later and a couple of influential people who died of AIDS.
Yep.
Others point to Richard Nixon, who combined the U.S. Army's Biowarfare Department with the National Cancer Institution in 1971, though the core discoverers of HIV, Dr. Robert Gallo and the National Cancer Institution, and Dr. Luc Montagnier of the Pasteur Institute in Paris, don't agree on its origins. Most members of the scientific community believe that the virus jumped from monkeys to humans sometime during the late 1930s. So, Steven, being the expert in this subject matter, what do you think the CIA's involvement is with the AIDS epidemic?
Well, I wouldn't. There's a lot going on out there, but if you ask me, because I'm an expert, I'm very knowledgeable in such subject, and I really know, I'm pretty much the smartest person alive. So if you ask me, I don't think it's just American. I don't think it's just the CIA involvement. I would say that there's other things I will cover later. But if you ask me, there is a lot going on right now. I've always been saying the government is corrupt. The government is not for the people. It's so the people can look up to them, and they gain wealth from everything. So there's many things. I don't know if you would like me to get into some of them now, or you would ask me some more questions.
We'll get into them later. Just another question for you. It's mentioned that the main part of this theory is that gays and blacks are targeted. What do you have to say about that, and why do you think these groups of people were chosen?
Well, obviously, it's because the government always has an agenda on something. Obviously, blacks is the visible minority race within the Western world, and obviously, there's a very, very small percentage of homosexual people in the United States. So I think that because they're heavily oppressed, because they really go against the norm of society, I really do believe that that's why they were targeted. They really wanted to establish a society in which those people were ridden. They got rid of them so that it could be pure straight, pure white, and other ethnicities, not gay and black mixed with it. If you really ask me, that also plays into the whole notion that the government is corrupt, and I think that it is also not a good reason at all.
I think a lot of these dates lead up to it being that in these times, like in the 70s and the 80s, we're just coming out of the civil rights movement where black people were fighting for black power, and I think the government might have just been so fed up with it that they decided to invent and extrapolate this virus and try to, wipe them out from stop making a commotion in the media. What do you think, Steven?
I would have to agree with you. A big part of government, even nowadays, is censorship. So if you were to eliminate threats, talking about specific things such as this, then that would be beneficial to the government. So I would 100% agree with your statement that you just said.
AIDS was once known as the gay person's disease. Do you think that's a direct correlation of the fact that the CIA was distributing it to gay people?
I mean, I would like to say that when AIDS first came out in the 20th century, it was very much for lack of a better term, it was a gay person's disease. The statistics were overwhelming. Over 95% of gay people at the time did, well, not 95% of gay people at the time, but 95% of the disease that was caught was in gay people. So I would say that it was a gay person's disease, but now there have been, in the last maybe 25 to 30 years, there has been a lot of heterosexual straight people that have been coming up with disease. You look at the famous rapper Eazy-E of NWA. He died of AIDS in 1991 at the peak of his career. He was a straight person, and he also was very adulterous in his career.
The thing with Eazy-E though is that he's African American, so just going off of one minority to another, just slowly eliminating them as the CIA's plan.
I do think there's a correlation there. I do think when you look at it, it does get a little scary with regards to the direct relation between Eazy-E being African American and dying of the disease. And there are a lot more terrible theories revolving around this, which I'll get into later, that the government hid it for such a long time and really did nothing about it, and also just dismissed the fact that this was going on. As I said, I'll talk about this later.
One theory that I just want to get into before I pass it off to Steven to give us some expert knowledge is that when everybody was out talking about how it was just gay people getting the virus, a great outbreak in the media was the discovery that Magic Johnson himself had been diagnosed with AIDS. You look at Magic Johnson now, he still looks like a pretty happy, healthy guy. Theories going around is that he faked the fact that he was diagnosed with AIDS just to show the media that, hey, look, it's not gay people, it's successful straight people that can get it too. But at the same time, he's another African American, so to the point of revolving around this conspiracy theory. It's just another check off in their checklist of just going along with their agenda. But that being said, there are a bunch of other theories around the government's involvement. I'm going to pass it on to our expert to talk about a couple of those now.
So first off, I'd like to say that Sebastian, or Slab, Redhead, whatever you want to call him, he did mention the date 1981, and this is very, very significant. In 1980, there was an operation launched called Operation Infection, and it was by the Russian Governor General. His name was Yevgeny Yamkov, I believe his name was, and what that all was that he was trying to, because it was at the time of the Cold War, the relations of the U.S. and Russia, not very good. The whole fear tactic of the Cold War continued. This Yevgeny Yamkov, what he wanted to do was he wanted to expose America for hiding the fact that the CIA had spread AIDS. Now, when this was brought up to the CIA, they completely dismissed it, and it was not mentioned up until 2011 when it came out. So it really shows the whole theory and idea that the government's involvement in it is great, and that they did cause it somehow. Also, another one was that, if you're familiar with hip-hop, the great Nipsey Hussle, famous Crip from Crenshaw, Los Angeles, has recently passed away on April Fool's Day, April 1st, 2019. And he wanted to cover a documentary about a doctor, an African American doctor named Dr. Urshala. Now, what happened with Dr. Urshala was Sebastian had mentioned two people previously, or one or two people who he had previously mentioned that had found the cure for it. But it was as early as the 1970s that Dr. Urshala found the cure for this disease. He brought it up to two governmental debates, and they completely dismissed his arguments, saying that there's no possible way. If you ask me, it's because they fully know they were the ones spreading it. But Nipsey Hussle, what he was going to do was he was going to make a documentary about Dr. Urshala. What happened when a month after he announced that he was going to make it, he had been murdered, and there is no footage from security cameras surrounding the scene where he had been murdered of the actual shooting taking place. It's all chopped from a guy walking up to him. The actual shots were not shown to happen, and then the next frame or shot was him lying on the ground dead with a bullet hole in his head. So I wouldn't say that it's just the government spreading this, also the government hiding it and concealing it to push their agenda further and just trying to make it seem like they're not a corrupt thing like many of us believe they are. And I believe from hiding this, they're doing a pretty good job. Yeah.
We talked a lot about different theories going around about blacks and gays dying, but I think one thing we also have to consider here is the complete likelihood that this was just a virus that was passed on from monkeys to man. Being that we have a lot of, call it what you want, evidence supporting the fact that the government could be regulating and spreading this virus, where do you think the likelihood is that this is simply just a natural spreading disease that was given to us by monkeys?
Well, I think you really have to look at it a little bit, because if it was spread by monkeys to humans, that could mean many things. This sounds kind of ridiculous, but was there sort of an intimacy between the monkeys and humans? This is an actual question that needs to be raised. Or was it just human contact with monkeys while exploring certain places?
Are you saying that a man performed the unholy deed with a monkey that gave birth to this virus we now know as AIDS?
See, I'm not saying that happened, but I'm also not saying it didn't happen.
We gotta consider everything here. We're conspiracy theorists. We just gotta look at all the possible possibilities. But I think the government did it. On Conspiracy Chatter, brought to you by myself, Sebastian Laboro, the one underlining theme is that the government's hiding everything. This is just another example of it. Government's corrupt. Steven said it himself. He's the expert.
I'm the expert.
I'm just saying I think they did it. But Steven, again, why do you think they would do such a thing?
Well, I hate going back to this theme, but the government is corrupt, and that they will do anything to push an agenda. And if this is one of the agendas that they have to push, then they are going to do it. Unfortunately, it's a very sad thing to say that the government can kill innocent people, but you look at governments all through history. 100 million people died in a century for communism. 6 million people died under Hitler's fascist rule. Genghis Khan, all sorts of things that the government have done to kill people continues to happen. You look at Joseph Stalin, he killed somebody for stop clapping at one of his rallies. It's happening in governments across the world. So why would it stop all of a sudden now? Even though society has made tremendous strides since a lot of these killings have taken place, who's there to say that the government has not started killing people with these diseases?
I think there's a lot of sequential events that happened in order that lead to the idea that the government did have an involvement. You look at the fact that all the early sightings of AIDS were in gays and blacks, which raises the theme for this theory. You also look at the fact that the AIDS outbreak was at a pivotal point where it seemed like everybody that was black or gay was getting AIDS, but now you look at it today where it's still fairly common, but not as close to how it was at this time in the 70s and the 80s where allegedly the government distributed it. So it would make sense that they tested it out during hepatitis B shots or in however other unorthodox measures. They were just giving it to everybody. Hence the reason why the huge AIDS outbreak happened. And then the government's like, oh shoot, we can't be doing this. Everyone's onto our tail. I got conspiracy theorists like Sebastian Labora trying to debunk what we're doing here. So they slowed down their operation, but AIDS being a naturally spreading disease, it's still carried out today. Do you think the government considered these repercussions when they did this biological warfare onto minorities?
Are you talking repercussions from the members of society?
Well, just the fact that it was meant to be just for blacks and gays, but now today it's spreading to anybody?
Well, obviously, as we said, it did start off with African American and homosexual people, but you also have to realize that the government is very smart in how they do it. If you look at certain graphs and statistics, those in the LA riots of 1992, which all started from unfair policing. As I said, in LA, in the largely black communities, the disease did spike around this time. So, if you really want to look at it, the repercussions so far, because it's not the most well-known conspiracy theory, the repercussions have been very limited because of it. So, the government is very smart in how they do it, and I also think that there needs to be more research, there needs to be more sort of a stigma broken, because some people do believe that it's mainly in homosexual and black people. But this is just this is the stigma that has to be broken. The fact that anybody can get it, and also people just need to do their research and stop making extreme claims. And maybe one day we will actually figure out what happened with the disease and the spreading.
You mentioned the name of a Russian doctor who found the cure for AIDS, supposedly. Do you think that the government, when inventing the virus, also invented the solution to it but has refused to share it to the public?
I mean, I believe so. I'm not one to say because I don't have overwhelming data or statistics to back it up. But if the government is going to create something with such drastic problems, I don't see why they wouldn't create the solution to that problem. If not, it would be sort of a double-edged sword where you bring something into the world and then you have no way of taking it out if it's needed to be taken out in the future.
That's a very good point. I like the analogy of the double-edged sword.
That's why they call me the best in the game.
So I use the expert. So I think we're just coming up to the end of time here for this week's episode. Steven, you want to just give us a brief rundown, key dates, names, and all that for the viewers at home to take home and remember?
Yeah, I'll give you a brief rundown, and I'm also, if that's okay, I'm gonna plug a couple things at the end here.
Go ahead.
So I just wanna let it be known. Don't trust the government. Okay, they're hiding so many things. You can't trust them.
You can't trust the system.
The system is corrupt. Okay, and this is coming from an expert. Okay, not only am I an expert in this disease, I'm also an expert in sociology, gender studies, history. I'm a lawyer. I'm also a judge while being a lawyer. I'm a psychologist. I'm a psychoanalyst. I have a major in ballet. And on top of that, I own my very own podcast called Conservative Communications. So tune into it if you want to hear some cool stuff about what it takes to be conservative. So you like how smooth that was?
Yeah.
So tune into Conservative Communications. I'm going to have Ben Shapiro on at the next episode. Steven Crowder's coming in. Jordan Peterson's coming. We're going to talk about the meaning of life and whatnot. And hopefully I get to pet Steven Crowder's dog live on air. So that should be fun.
Well, thank you for that unpaid advertisement. But just remember, can't trust the government. For those of you living south of the border of us here up in the great north of Canada, be careful. Watch your back. Sleep with one eye open. Have protected sex. You don't know who's trying to give you AIDS next.
Right? That's an absurd remark. Watch your windows for Bigfoot crawling in. Don't go to Area 51.
Just be safe. Who knows if these conspiracy theories are true? I think we debunked it. But that just about wraps up this week's episode. Stay tuned next week. We got a big one. We got Anthony Amatrano helping us debunk a couple of things. I'm not
about how to lose weight.
Not going to talk about what the topic is yet. But it's a good one. Not as good as the one you just listened, so thanks again. Hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much, Steven, for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I love talking about the disease.
Alright, bye guys.